Good evening. Would ask everyone please to be seated. I'd like to welcome you to the 2022 deliberative session of the Jaffrey Ridge Cooperative School District, SAU 47. My name is Bob Shawman. I'm your school district moderator. At this time, we'll have the presentation of the American flag. Boy Scouts from Troop 308 of Ringe, including Kyle Paolino, Aaron Graham, and Logan Lebrecq. Would you all please stand?
Color guard, attention. Color guard, advance. Color guard, prepare to post the colors. Post the colors. Color guard, salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2, color guard, return to ranks. Color guard, retreat. Color guard, dismiss. Audience, you may be seated. Thank you.
Would you please remain standing for the national anthem sung by Conant High School freshman, Jaden Bryan. Jaden?
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hail at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watch were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you, Jaden. I'd like to introduce our Superintendent of Schools, SAU 47, Reuben Duncan, for opening remarks and introduction of the members of the SAU 47 School Board and other key personnel. Reuben?
Good evening and welcome. It's good to see so many of you out here tonight for this deliberative session. Over the last couple of years, we've had much smaller groups, but it's good to see many more individuals coming in even as we speak. I'd like to start off tonight by saying a few words about our schools. Our district's mission statement is we engage, empower, inspire all learners to thrive in their lives and communities. Leading up to the current school year, our school administration shaped goals and outcomes for the 2021-22 school year. While COVID-19 continues to be a source of difficulty and has placed strain on our system, our focus on personalized learning for our children has remained strong. This year, we have been in the process of continuing to make forward progress by implementing a variety of activities aimed at helping us reach our goals. With support from a consultant from the New Hampshire Department of Education, over the next 4 years, the district will implement what's called as a multi-tiered system of support for behavior and wellness. This is a process that will result in the entire district having a clear, effective process for supporting all learners' social, emotional, and behavioral well-being from pre-kindergarten through grade 12. We continue to develop personal learning plans, develop rigorous and meaningful curriculum, improve communication throughout the district, increase learner participation in after-school activities, increase the distribution of leadership in each school and across the district to include more teacher leaders, strengthen and develop community partnerships, improve safety, and increase efficiency and accuracy throughout our business operations. I encourage you to take a copy of the preliminary annual report if you haven't done so already, and read what our school principals, our SAU directors, and our school board members have reported out. Our schools have accomplished a great deal this year. Not only have they continued to make improvements, they have implemented collaborative systems that will serve as the foundation for change and innovation for years to come. I'm proud of our community, our school board, our educators, and our learners for what they have achieved this past year. I'm even more excited about what they will accomplish together in the years to come. At this time, I would like to make a few introductions. Over to my right, we have Marcia Gustafson-Beltate. She's the chair of the school board, and she fills the at-large position on the school board. Also, pretty interesting, just noticed this today. If you look way in the back, that top middle sign that's up there, that banner, says RMS Odyssey of the Mind finalist, 1998, 1999. The coach is Marcia Gustafson-Beltate. So thank you for your many years of service. Her position is up this year, unfortunately not running again, but we do appreciate your time through the last 3 years, Marcia, and chairing the board the last couple of years. To her right, Charlie Eicher, the vice chair from Ringe. After that, we have John McCarthy from Jaffrey. Then we have Patty Farmer from Jaffrey, Alicia Stenerson from Ringe, Christine Pressman from Jaffrey, and Lisa Wiley from Ringe. Representatives from the district and also our legal counsel for tonight will be to my left. I'll be seated right here. I have the Polar Seltzer water can. Next to me will be Attorney Gordon Graham, the district's legal counsel for this evening. Jennifer Horn, District Director of Student Services. John LeClaire, our Facilities Director. And Carrie Broderick, our District Chief Financial Officer. I'd like to recognize our advisory, our Budget Committee advisory for this year. There is one member from Jaffrey and one member from Ringe. The member from Jaffrey is Laurel McKenzie, and the individual from Ringe is Carl Pruder. And then there are two other individuals I'd like to recognize tonight. They're right in front of me with their backs to you, but making sure that this entire event runs and it runs effectively. This is also live streamed for those individuals who were not able to make it tonight to be able to view this and take part in that way. We have our district communication coordinator, Nicholas Handy, and our district clerk, Leslie McLean.
Thank you, Ruben. Couple of quick housekeeping chores. You've heard this before, but bears repeating again. Please, no smoking in this building whatsoever. Restrooms are located outside to the left and right as you approach the exit. The fire exits are also on both sides, over this here, also in the front. Want to give a special thank you to our two moderators. Charlie Eichert is the Ringe Town moderator. He serves on the school board. And of course, Mark Teeger is the Jaffrey Town moderator. I asked Mark if he'd be kind enough to oversee, should we have an overflow situation? I don't think that will happen, but I want to thank you, Mark, for your willingness to help to assist, and hopefully we won't need to use the overflow room. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we have 10 warrant articles this evening. The first of which is a proposed operating budget. At our cooperative school district deliberative session, we're governed by the passage of Senate Bill 2. And we shall vote in 2 towns via paper ballot on the warrant as we agree to the wording and/or the dollar figures for this evening. Voting will be in Ringe and Jaffrey on Tuesday, March the 8th from 7 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the evening. Now, voters at tonight's deliberative session under Senate Bill 2 rules are empowered to do basically 2 things. You may maintain the original wording of a warrant article as read. The original warrant article wording would, if approved, that is, no changes are made, would be placed on the March 8th official ballot that will be voted on in both Ringe and in Jaffrey. You may also amend the original wording or dollar amounts of the original warrant article. Amendments require a simple majority and may be made from the floor. A second to the motion to amend is a requirement. If there's no second, the motion to amend dies for lack of a second. If the amendment passes, and we would take a voice vote, the amended warrant article would then be placed on the March 8th official ballot in both towns as amended. Now, in the past 7 years, I've been privileged to serve as your school district moderator. We've utilized a few simple rules for discussion that I'll share. And then I'll ask for your support for these rules so the meeting might move forward in an orderly fashion. There are 2 microphones on the floor. And Nicholas, I'm looking, actually there's one right there in the middle. Bingo, right in the middle. And if the 2 up here will be used by school board or others. Either the microphone may be used to discuss a warrant article, to speak for or against the warrant article, ask a question, propose an amendment, or if there are several people who wish to speak and no one else at the mic, you can call the question, which means we'll end the discussion and move forward. We also have a roving microphone for those who may wish to speak but have some trouble in terms of movement. Nicholas Sandy in front here, if you just simply raise your hand like that so I can see you, we will come back and bring the microphone to you. When you do speak, please state your name and your address in town. That way we know who you are and in which town you live, and we keep that in the minutes of the meeting. The chair asks, that is the moderator asks, that if you wish to speak, that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. This should be ample opportunity to share your opinions, ask questions, offer a proposed amendment, so that others in line may be able to speak at the microphone. Now, a voter may speak at a second time, but only after all those who have spoken the first time have a chance to do so, at which point then a person could then speak a second time. Sometimes the discussion gets to the point where the audience begins to think, I think we're starting to repeat ourselves, and someone may wish to call the question. That's fine, but the calling of the question will only be recognized for a vote by the citizenry here after everybody who is standing at the microphone has an opportunity to speak or they wish to relinquish their speech. So please don't go running up once you hear a call to question, because I will not recognize you. That's in fairness to those who have proposed the motion. There will be no amendments to amendments. Each amendment, if any is raised, will be discussed and then voted upon. Should another amendment then be moved, once we've voted on the previous amendment, that will be acceptable. All amendments should be presented to the moderator in writing so that we have a record of the exact wording that the voter wishes to propose for their amendment. Lastly, to prevent any what I call 11th hour runs, the moderator will recognize a motion to restrict reconsideration. Now, when this is moved and seconded and approved by you, the voters, by a simple voice vote, this means that no one can ask that a previously agreed upon wording or a dollar amount that you've approved can be reconsidered. That prevents, if many of you have to leave or go home because of babysitters, that prevents somebody at the 11th hour from changing it. And then you read the next day in the ledger transcript that what you thought you voted on or approved has changed. Want to ask you for two things. Number one, if we have any students who are under the age of 18, is it your wish that should they wish to speak, would that be okay with you? If you agree, just simply voice yay. If opposed, nay. All those in favor, yay. Opposed? Yeas have it. Thank you. Also, if you're a non-resident or non-voter, I would ask you to please sit in the far left. There's some seats alongside of the bleachers. Okay, so those are proposed meeting rules. I'd ask for your approval. Hopefully they make sense that as they have in years past. And I would simply ask if you are in agreement that this is how we should run the meeting for your for orderly progress. Please signify so by saying aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Who took my warrant articles? Okay. The operating budget, Article 2, in front of you. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amounts set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling $27,530,232. Should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be $26,988,493, which is the same as last year, with certain adjustments required by previous action of the school district or by law, where the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40:13, Section 10 and Section 16, to take up the issue of the revised operating budget only. This was recommended by the Jaffrey Ridge Cooperative School Board by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. This operating budget warrant article does not include appropriations contained in any other warrant articles. Ruben, I believe you wish to speak to the warrant article 2.
So if you have been watching us online with our board meetings and also the budget hearing that we had, some of these slides will look familiar. We'll have a few additional slides as well. I'll go through them as quickly as we possibly can so that we can have some conversation and pause at some of the areas that are of perhaps most interest. This is a graph right here. This slide and the next slide really are graphs of about the same thing. This one includes revenues and food service. The next one just shows a bit of a different look with just the general fund without the revenues. And you can see that from this current year's operating budget that we have to the proposed one next year, we are looking at a 2.84% increase. if we were to remove the items that I had talked about, the food service and other revenue and so forth, it would be roughly a 2.91% increase, just the approved general fund comparisons. The proposed operating budget was determined by a process over, I would say, about a 3 to 4 month period of time, where we have, over the course of several years, determined a process that we have found to be good for our community, to be helpful in making sure that we had what we need, and to be as fiscally responsible as possible as well. We look at 4 to 5 years of data. We look at averages. We see where those averages make sense. We see where things have changed. In this year, we have a lot of things that have changed that kind of buck the normal trend due to COVID-19. I think that everyone understands that, as certainly there have been deliberative sessions across the state, both town as well as school districts, that have had to talk about increases in certain areas, and we'll get to those. But we have a finance committee, a very active finance committee. Those individuals are myself, the finance director over here, the chief financial officer, Carrie Broderick, Charlie Eicher, John, and also Marcia. Now, the goal that we set forth in looking at just how things were shaping up in the financial world around us was that we wanted to be under 3%. And through several iterations of this budget, we were able to get it to be under 3%. It has been a relatively painful process to get it to that spot. It is not an apples to apples budget as we have this year. We have cut many things out. Next year's budget, even though it is more expensive, we are actually only doing that because of increased costs. And so we're actually getting less for that amount. And the graph that I have here, the pie graph I show every year, is just the percentage of where the budget is. It's about 76% staffing and about 24% everything else. That everything else might be facilities, equipment, curriculum materials, anything having to do with, payment of plowing or electricity or anything of that nature. The 22-23 proposed operating budget has a couple of areas that have really kind of shaken us even during this school year right here, and caused us to have to do an incredible amount of work to find the funds that we need in order to pay for some very sudden and unexpected increases. And no other location has increased in such a high way than special education. And so we have a moral and legal obligation to provide these services. And with overall, the increase in special education this year is a little bit over $1 million. I'll have another slide that breaks it down to some increases of about $875,000 that don't include staffing needs, but including staffing and transportation and out of district placement tuition, it's that $1 million mark that is increased. And those are costs that are absolutely necessary. And so when you look at our budget through that lens, we get the proposed next year's operating budget of $27,530,232. If you were to remove that increase of $1,078,000, you'd get an amount that actually is less than by about 1% than this current year's operating budget. And in order to get to that amount, we had to cut several areas. Notable changes, just to kind of reiterate some of the increase in costs. We have special education, some increased costs and salaries for SAU positions. That's everyone who works in the SAU, regardless of their position, as well as the school administration in each of the schools. This is not the teacher's contract. It is not the support staff contract. Those are other warrant articles. The budget does actually include an increase in the healthcare, but that increase, even though it's up 3%, that 3% is an incredible savings compared to what most districts are seeing. We were definitely on the lowest end of that. Again, I have to give credit to people who did not just do business in the moment, but thought about the future. Our JREA and JRSSA leaders who bargained with this school board, many of whom are here over the last 6 years, have negotiated really sound contracts that have been both beneficial to the employees as well as to this district. And year after year, we have saved money as a result of that, or we have saved in the sense of not having those massive increases as many do have. I've heard that in area schools around here, we've had as much as 15 to 16% health care increases, and I'm glad that we're not there. We've had an increase in facilities. We actually are budgeting less in facilities with the work that we're trying to get done, but just to do business as usual for the most part with all our utility costs, it's an additional $113,000. We have increased our substitute line. This is something that we've needed to do. We've tried to keep it flat for many years. It's not prudent, and we've added 60,000 into that area. Transportation, even though we are signing a multi-year contract that is increasing this coming year by about 13%, we have been very fortunate. Well, I will say currently we are very fortunate that we are really we pay the lowest rates in the entire area, maybe the entire state. We will continue to do so over the next several years, but we'll work our way closer to market value. We've been very fortunate in this district, and we've had very good service with our bus company. Our new owners are wonderful individuals, and they've worked very hard, especially during this very trying year of COVID illness and lack of bus drivers. We have, by our own choice, decreased the budget by some SAU staffing in the tune of $118,000. What's not written here is we've also decreased a number of areas that I don't think we should decrease, but we knew that we needed to be as frugal as possible. We have cut out approximately a couple $100,000 having to do with computers, copiers, Chromebooks. We have a Chromebook cycle, paint and carpeting. Some of that has been decreased, as well as a decrease in some of our digital programs that we have, and also some of our middle school, high school equipment that we had budgeted for. We'll be fine. That way, we will, look for other ways if at all possible. We've been able to find some grants here and there to help with that, and we'll continue to try to get those types of supplies in more creative ways. And certainly, we have a wonderful staff who is able to do a lot of maintenance on these items, and so hopefully for a year, we're going to be in good order that way. It's not how we would like to operate. The next slide shows staffing, where staffing has been consistent from an overall FTE for a number of years, really from 2014 all the way through here. We haven't had that large of a change in staffing, a little bit of a dip in the 18-19 school year. Some of that staffing changes. Sometimes we have more professional staff, sometimes we have more clerical staff. Our administrative staff has gone down at times through the course of the last several years. We're probably staying even for the last couple of years in that area. Our proposed operating budget, again, this is another slide just to show the same information, but just in a different way, is the $27,530,000. And down below is the default budget, which is about $500,000, a little over $500,000 below that. And the default budget is a budget that is developed. We take away all the one-time costs from this year. Like for instance, if we were just to purchase copiers 1 year and that wasn't in a cycle or anything of that nature, we would take that one-time expense out of the budget, and it would start to make the default budget. It includes all of our legal obligations. So most of our special education increases are indeed in that default budget, and that's the majority. Some of our facilities costs, however, that are increases are not in that default budget. Some of our transportation costs are not in that default budget. If those transportation costs that are increased have to do with special education, depending on the circumstance, they might be in the default budget. The default budget summary is on the next slide, and we can see the reductions and/or increases. You see a $300,000 reduction at one point in time, and that's simply we had a bond for several years that we were paying on. We were getting revenue for that, as well as we were paying for $300,000 on it, and that has dropped off. This was the last year of payment. That had to do with the middle school facility. And so that's the change there. We take a look at the next slide, the 22-23 operating budget, or the proposed operating budget. This is just some more interesting information, because it's how really we get into the tax conversation. Enrollment has changed. We know that that's part of the apportionment formula within this cooperative school district. And you can see that Jaffrey's population has stayed relatively consistent, a little bit lower, but the Ringe population from 2021 to now, or to next year, is certainly dropped a lot over the last couple of years. And adequacy at the same time has been frozen during this period of time. So you'll see that Ringe has maintained that level of adequacy, as well as Jaffrey getting some positive percentage in that area. How the costs are shared between towns. This is something that if you have that handout, you should look at. You can see the difference between the 21-22, which is the actual, that if you look at the ADM, the average daily membership, that it's more or less 50-50. And then the change, of course, where it is not 50-50 is in that equalized valuation, where there's a bit of a gap. That gap stays the same, really, for the 22-23 for the equalized valuation. But the big change is in the average daily membership, and that's why I showed you that previous slide of, the previous slide with the numbers of students, in that the percentages take a significant shift, 6% to be specific. And so if we go to this last slide, it's not all about this first article, but I think it's important for us to view this first article through all of the warrant articles that we're talking about, because everything kind of goes together in the end and on the ballot. You can see that the Article 2, the one I'm talking about right now, does have an impact of $3.09 if passed in Jaffrey, and 94 cents in Ringe. That has a lot to do, or just about everything to do, with the apportionment formula and the change in the population. That's actually a shift in the other direction from where it has been for many years. The Article 3, the JREA-CBA, our teachers contract that was negotiated, which will be talked about in a little while, JRSSA, some modifications to a contract, which will be discussed, and some work that we need to get done in our schools. You can see those tax rates, the impact of those passing, and the total tax rate increase in both Ringe and Jaffrey is on that slide as well for you to consider as you have conversations tonight and as you provide feedback and ask questions. And if there are any votes at any point in time, for you to consider all of that within your decision making. So I want to thank you for listening. I really appreciate the attention that you've provided, and I'll turn it back over to Bob.
Thank you, Ruben. At this time, the floor is open for questions, comments, amendments, anything? Yes, sir.
Kevin Chamberlain, Darcy Drive, Jaffrey. I'd like to propose an amendment to Article 2. And the only thing I'd like to change at this point in time would be the requested amount of $27,530,232. I'd like to amend that figure to the default number of $26,988,493.
Give me a microphone. The amendment is in order. Is there a second to that amendment? Okay. Name, please, of the person seconding. Thank you. Okay, Kevin, would you like to speak to the motion? Okay, repeat the name again, please. I know you are, Kathy, but we need to have you announce it. Okay. Kevin, you have the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, everybody that's attending this meeting tonight. Just a couple points I'd like to point out why I'm asking for this amended amount. In looking at the figures that the school district has provided on their website, and also some that were up here on the slides earlier. In 2019, there was 1,401 students in pre-K to 12, and at that time, the staffing levels are 241.35 positions. Currently, we're down to, I believe it was 1,235 students, and to the best of my knowledge, based on the information that I've found on the website, we're at 251.18 staff, almost 10 more staff members than what we had when we had over 100 and something more students. So we've got a lot less students and we have more staff. The proposed operating budget that the school district has presented represents $309 per thousand to the Jaffrey residents. The amended amount represents $260,000 to the assessed value. If the amended amount is adopted, then the school's administration will know tonight what operating budget will be, and it will allow them additional time to formulate a plan to implement this budget versus waiting to March to see if they would get the operating budget that they're asking for or the default budget. It is my understanding from discussions with school board representatives and district administration that Article 3 and Article 5 are very critical articles needed to maintain the support of the Jaffrey Range Education Association and the Jaffrey Range Support Association, Support Staff Association. In my opinion, if this operating budget is not amended this evening, I feel those two articles possibly will be in jeopardy of not passing in March. Those two budgets alone, or those two articles alone, will add an additional 49 cents to the Jaffrey tax rate. So in closing, if all the articles are passed as currently presented, then Jaffrey taxpayers will be looking at an increase of $4.28 per thousand of assessed value. That means if you have a home that's assessed at $200,000, you'll be looking at a tax bill greater than $800 than it was last fall, just for the school portion of your tax bill. I've been a taxpayer in the town of Jaffrey for over 40 years. And I cannot remember a time when either Jaffrey or Ringe were faced with an increase of this magnitude to our tax bill. And I ask people to consider this amendment and support the amended article. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to be very clear, let me simplify the amendment. If you look at Article 2, the amendment is, shall we delete $27,530,232 and insert $26,988 $26,988,493. What'd I say? Oh, that would be so nice. No. $26,988,493. Thank you, Marcia. Would anybody like to speak to the amendment and the amendment only?
Sorry, a little shorter. My name is Kevin Swift, 18 Crestview Drive in Jaffrey. I cannot support this amendment in any way, shape, or form. The school board and the administrators have done a huge job of trying to find cost savings and ways of making things work for less, and we are at the bone. Cutting further than this is going to hurt the services for our students. It's going to hurt our property values because our school quality is going to go down, and that doesn't help any of us. It's a big pinch to think about an $800 additional tax bill to have to deal with next year. But this is for the kids, this is for the future, and this is what we need to be doing.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Christine Chesney, Jaffrey. I am against changing the article as requested. I look around at how few people we have here and the turnout, and I feel that that would be taking away the voters' rights.
Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment only? Yes, sir. Please approach the microphone.
Dan Whitney, Ringe. It's been a while since this got asked for. Mr. Moderator, how many signatures do you need for a secret ballot? I think many people would be much more comfortable either way, using the ballots that we picked up coming in than either standing or having a separation of the room. If you need 5, I think I can make that happen pretty quickly here.
Okay, a secret ballot would require 5 signatures of those who are registered voters. If you had that, we can have a secret ballot at the time of voting.
Give me about 120 seconds, thanks.
You have it, sir. Would anybody else like to speak to the amendment and the amendment only?
Allison Heon, Ringe, New Hampshire, to many of your students, Mrs. Heon. And I've been in the district 25 years or so. Yes, the number of students are going down. And yes, sir, I agree. It doesn't make sense why the staff's going up. However, we've got kids who need more individual or shared help with smaller numbers. We have kids with social, emotional issues that I, as a classroom teacher dealing with 20 or so kids, cannot help that child. Never mind the special ed kids who do need the extra, and thus that extra money that Ruben so poignantly or told us how much of an increase. It's just the way it is. We can ship them out, but that increase is going to be so much more. I know it doesn't make sense, but that's what I've seen. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm against the proposal.
Okay. Yes, please.
Roberta Acer, Main Street and Ringe. I'm not in favor of, everybody take a deep breath. I have stood up here and said, cut the budget by $1 million. I think that the school board has finally gotten it, which I thought might happen when you have your surplus now. I have a question for legal counsel. I don't think the amendment's legal because yes and no is the same. There is no choice. If you vote yes, if you vote no, you get the same result. And I thought you had to have a choice when you voted. I'm not in favor of it anyway, but don't you have to have a choice when you vote?
No, no, it's this body's determination over that line in the budget. This body has absolute discretion at determining what that number is in the budget that's voted on March 8th. So I don't see any problem with the issue. Now, you may see a problem politically, and that's a perfectly valid point to point out, but in terms of legal issues, there's no issue with it.
Yes, please.
Patty McCarthy from Jaffrey. Could you just clarify then? I understand if the budget as proposed is voted down, we go to the default. Well, what if the only option is the default? What happens if that goes down? Is there another default somewhere else, or? I don't understand.
Back to you.
Well, the numbers would be the same, so it wouldn't matter whether it passed or failed. So, and that's how much money the district would have to work with.
So no matter what, we would have the default budget.
No, well, yes. I mean,
Okay.
it would be a default budget is not a budget. A default budget is a number. So you'd have that number.
Right,
That's-
well, I mean,
that's
we're
correct.
talking about budgets, but
Right.
yes.
It's a misnomer. The statute calls it a default budget, but it's really just a number that's determined by a mathematical formula. So
Okay,
that's the
that's-
number that you'd have, that's the number that the district would have to work with.
Either way. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the motion, to the amendment rather? Yes, ma'am.
Judy Younger, Clark, Ringe. I am opposed to dropping the budget. We have gone through 2.5 years of very critical times. We do not know where we are heading. Don't cut the budget.
Does anybody else wish to speak to the amendment and the amendment only? Yes, sir. No, the assumption is that the people that signed have checked in, they're registered voters, and we will have a secret ballot. Yes, Charlie Eichert.
Yes, I'd just like to make 2 points of clarity. One is, if the amendment is approved, the operating budget that we have next year will be $800,000 less than the one we have this year, because we still have to pay that $1 million in special ed costs, no matter what. I mean, that's mandated by the state and the federal government. The other thing is, like the lady said earlier, if you approve, and other people have said this, if you approve the amendment, you take away the voter's choice. As it stands now, people who want the default budget as the budget can vote for it, or they can vote for the higher amount. If you change or amend the budget, you're taking away the voter's right to make a choice.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the amendment? If not, all those in favor of calling the question and voting signify so by saying aye. Opposed? All right, let me explain. You have a green sheet here that's got an A, B, C, D, E vote. We're going to be using the A as an alpha ballots. If you are in favor of the amendment, which is to delete $27,530,232 and insert $26,988,000 $26,988,493. If you wish to vote in favor of the amendment, you will vote yes. If you are opposed to the amendment, you will insert a no ballot. So at this particular point, I'm going to ask Mark Teeger if he'd be kind enough to oversee the ballot box, which is right over here. The ballot box was checked earlier. It's empty. All you need to do is simply come up and insert your ballot, yes or no. Keep the other one in your pocket, and when everybody, we'll check to make sure everybody has voted. We will then count the votes. So we'll take a short recess while you vote. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to do a quick sanity check. Has everyone voted who wishes to vote? Has everyone voted who wishes to vote? We're going to close the balloting in 1 minute. Again, please, if you have not voted, please step up to the ballot box and cast your ballot. Ladies and gentlemen, seeing nobody else approaching the ballot box, I will declare the voting on the amendment closed. At this point, we will now proceed with warrant article number 3. While they're counting the votes, and as soon as we have a vote total, I will let you know what the tally is. I've been asked to remove my mask because I guess it gets a little bit muffled. No problem. Warrant Article 3 reads as follows, and we will come back to Warrant Article 2. Warrant Article 3 reads, shall the school district vote to approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement reached between the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District and the Jaffrey Ringe Education Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the previous fiscal year. Fiscal year 2022-23, estimated increase of $455,745. And for the fiscal year 2023-2024, an estimated increase of $394,762. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of $455,745 for the 2022-2023 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. And this was recommended by the school board by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. And speaking to this particular motion, Charlie Eichert.
You hear me? Okay. All right, if you can't hear me, raise your hand while I'm talking because I'll be in and out of this mic. I'm going to try to be brief tonight. First thing I'd like to say is that our entire staff has really stepped up during this pandemic and have performed admirably under extraordinarily difficult circumstances. They have taken personal risks, putting our learners' education first. They have shouldered a heavy burden and successfully adapted to ever-changing challenges. And we couldn't be more proud of them. I'm only going to be brief and only cover the major changes from the old contract, including all of the benefit changes that have a cost impact. The Jaffrey Ringe Education Association is comprised of nurses, teachers, guidance counselors, specialists such as psychiatrists, speech therapists, physical therapists, and other special needs therapists. The vast majority of its members are teachers, so if I refer to teachers during this presentation, I'm including everyone that I just mentioned. The last contract we had was for 3 years, but this time we opted for a contract length of 2 years. This is a compromise between the stability of a long-term contract and the risk of a long-term contract during a time of volatile financial change. Please keep in mind that many of our teachers have retired or left teaching due to COVID, and quality replacement teachers are very, very hard to find. So our primary goal in this contract is to be competitive in the job market so we can keep our best people and hire new ones. Next slide. The proposed contract represents a first-year increase of 3.6% in the cost of salaries and benefits, and a second-year increase of 3%. This includes the benefit changes that I'll show on a following slide. Just for comparison purposes, though, the Social Security cost of living increase for 2022 is 5.9%. The latest inflation rate data published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Consumer Price Index, has an annual inflation rate of 7%. The latest data from the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank regarding annualized wage growth for New England is 4.3%. That's just wages and doesn't include benefits. It is typical for wage growth to lag inflation, so we would expect wage growth to be higher in the future. We believe that this contract is very conservative. The cost of this contract is well below the current annual inflation rate, the cost of living increase, and the annual wage growth. Next slide, please. The proposed new contract does not have many changes from the old contract. There are 4 that I'd like to highlight. The funding for all of these is included in the increase shown on a previous slide. For our newest teachers, we've added a student loan assistance provision. This program is available to teachers who have been with us 5 years or less and are on step 7 or lower. There are 20 steps in the salary schedule, so these are the lowest steps. An eligible teacher can get up to $2,000 in repayment assistance annually. The total cost is capped at $20,000, so that if more than 10 teachers participate, the max amount per teacher will be less. Life and dismemberment insurance has been one of our benefits and hasn't changed in over 10 years. In this contract, we've increased the coverage from $40,000 to $50,000 to remain competitive with other districts. The additional cost of this was $2,200. Due to the special credentials required and difficulty in finding special education teachers, we've increased the base of these positions to stay aligned with other districts. The additional cost of this is $35,000. Lastly, we've included 10 days of paid parental leave after the birth or adoption of a child. This leave will be concurrent with other birth or adoption leave. And this is approximately $3,700 per birth or adoption. So that's the few benefits in a proposed new contract. Over this contract, salary plus benefits is very conservative and deserves your support. So I'd like to leave you with a thought. It is this: any school is only as good as its worst teacher. A school whose worst teacher is a great teacher reasonably assures your child of a great education, no matter which teacher your child has. A school whose worst teacher is a good teacher assures your child of at least a good education. The quality of your child's education depends on the excellence of your school's teachers. Please keep this in mind when considering this contract. Thank you.
Okay, at this time, I would welcome anybody who wishes to speak relative to warrant article number 3. Seeing none, I sense you're comfortable with the wording of warrant article 3 as I read a few moments ago. I will instruct the school district clerk to ensure the wording of article 3 appears as you see before you and as I read on the March 8th election. Mark, do we have a ballot count? Ladies and gentlemen, the ballot required a simple majority to pass. There were total of 96 ballots cast. 24 voted in favor of the amendment. 72 voted against the amendment. The amendment fails.
I'd like to make a motion for no further consideration of any articles that we've considered.
Okay, before we accept that, Roberta, at this point, let me just check if there's any further discussion on the original warrant, which is warrant article number 2. If not, I sense you're comfortable with warrant article 2 as originally read. It has not been amended. I'll instruct the school district clerk to ensure the wording is as you see it there. At this point, I will accept that motion, Roberta, which is to restrict reconsideration. Is that correct? Is there a second to that? Your name, please. Okay. All right. By restricting reconsideration, if you vote yes, you're saying this warrant article cannot be revisited again this evening. Linda Tanner. Linda Town from Ringe. Got it. Thank you. Okay. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration signify so by saying aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, you've restricted reconsideration. Warrant article number 4. Shall the school district, if Article 3 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 3 cost items only? This was recommended by the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. Charlie?
If Article 3 is not approved, this article allows us to, wait a minute. Article 3 allows us to go back to the negotiating table, and if a new agreement is reached, present that agreement at a special meeting later on. If this article fails and Article 3 fails, it's likely we'll lose some of our best teachers. We would not be attractive to new good teachers, not only for salary reasons, but also because our district will be seen as an unstable and unsupported work environment. It's important that both Article 3 and Article 4 pass. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I sense you're comfortable with the wording of Article 4. I will instruct the school district clerk to ensure the wording is as I read it a moment ago and as you have before you. Warrant Article 5. Shall the school district vote to ratify the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement modification reached between the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District and the Jaffrey Ringe Support Staff Association, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits to the amount previously approved by voters at the current staffing levels over the amount paid in the prior fiscal year. For the fiscal year 2022-23, it would be an estimated increase of $61,405. And for the fiscal year 2023-24, the estimated increase would be a negative minus $10,554. And to further raise and appropriate the sum of $61,405 for the fiscal year 2022-23, such sum representing the additional cost attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those that would be paid at current staffing levels. This was voted and recommended by the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School Board by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. Lisa?
So at the bottom, it says the estimated tax impact of passing this article would be an increase of 0.06 per thousand for Jaffrey and 0.04 per thousand for Ringe. In 2020, the board and the JRSSA created a CBA for a 4-year contract, which was really exciting for all of us. It was done in great collaboration. When this was done, it was fall of 2019, which almost none of us can remember what that was like right now, but pretty much the starting rate around us was like $11 for like a really good job at Market Basket, right? So 2 years later, we're looking at this and watching McDonald's paying better by far than any of our starting staff. And this is related to our instructional associates, our custodial staff, our office clerks, which everything Charlie just said, it completely goes for these people who have gone above and beyond. Currently, for instructional associates trying to work with our special ed students, this is a mandatory job that has to happen by law. And currently, I believe, Jen, we are about a dozen people short, and have been consistently this year. We've been trying to hire and get people back that we have budgeted for, that we're ready to pay you. And it's been impossible to fill these roles because this is a very hard time to find quality staff. We need to make our starting rate more comparable to our region and more fitting for the role that they're doing. So currently, in the contract we have, in the agreement that we have, starting rate is for, I think for custodians, just under $13. And that's about what it is, about 13 starting rate in the current agreement. So we are proposing that we raise the minimum for these people to $15 an hour and go up a little incrementally. But as you can see, the tax impact is extremely minimal for this small amount. And I think it really could go a long way to helping our staff see that they are valued in this incredibly hard time.
Discussion from the floor. You're making my job easy. That being the case, I'll instruct the school district clerk to include the Article 5 wording exactly as you see it here and as I read it in the March 8th ballot. Article 6, shall the school district, if Article 5 is defeated? I'm sorry, did you wish to speak? Please, I'm sorry.
Hi, Margie Clark-Evan from Jaffrey, Sherwood Lane. I would like to see that go up at least $1, at $15. So I would like to make an amendment. Yes.
Okay, what is the exact wording of your amendment?
Oh, gosh. I would like to amend can you go back a slide?
Okay, hold on one second. We have a legal opinion.
Okay.
Graham? Go ahead, sir.
That's okay. The legislative body does not have authority under the law to make a change to the cost items that are agreed to as part of a collective bargaining agreement, either
Okay.
up or down. So it's very, in ratifying or considering a collective bargaining article, the legislative body, which is you folks, cannot make a modification to those cost items.
Okay,
All right?
that's fine. Then can I just publicly say those support staff are amazing and we need to really try to keep them.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to vote? Is there anybody else who wishes to speak to the warrant article? All right, seeing no one, we will ensure the warrant article number 5 appears on the ballot exactly as you see before you and as I read. Warrant Article 6, shall the school district, if Article 5 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 5 cost items only. This was recommended by this Cooperative School District Board by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. Christine? Oops, Lisa.
Lisa. So what it says, have a special meeting, just like Charlie said, there you go.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, I will ensure that Article 6 is on the ballot exactly as I read and as you have before you. Warrant Article 7, Dan?
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to move to restrict reconsideration of all articles moved on to this point.
Okay, there's a motion to restrict reconsideration on all articles, which would be Article 3, Dan, through Article 6, since we already did number 2. Is there a second to that? By Roberto Oster? All right. All those in favor of restricting reconsideration of warrant articles 3 through 6, please signify so by saying aye. And opposed? Okay, you've restricted reconsideration, thus declared. Warrant Article 7. Shall the school district vote to authorize the school board to enter into a 15-year lease purchase agreement for $4,471,775 for the purpose of lease purchasing HVAC upgrades and financing the construction and installation of such upgrades at the Jaffrey Ringe Middle School and Conant High School, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $374,586 for the first payment of the lease purchase agreement, with future payments to be included in the district's operating and default budgets. This lease agreement contains a non-appropriation escape clause. This was recommended by the Jaffrey Ringe School Board, Cooperative School Board, by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. John McCarthy.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Could we get the next slide, please? That's a picture of Conant High School from, we think, around 1915. And it tells part of the story of where we stand with our buildings. This building is being upgraded. The HVAC for this building is being upgraded right now. And so is the Jaffrey Grade School being upgraded. We were fortunate to get federal funding to help us make that upgrade. And we decided to start with the elementary schools. This building in front of you, as well as the Conant High School, the now Conant High School, they're both very old buildings, and we decided some 20 years ago that we were going to stay with those buildings and not build a new high school, middle school complex. And now we have repairs. Many of you will have picked up an annual report from the district. You can take a look. I think it's on page 16. There's a list of all of the, or actually not all, but some of the work done by the facilities department this year. We have had a lot of emergency repairs, some of them pretty serious. And it's just something that comes with the territory of having older schools. At our budget hearing 2 weeks ago, we removed several items that have to do with improvements that are needed to the schools. And we left this particular article, number 7, in because we think it's a critical improvement to finish the HVAC upgrade in the middle school and the high school. Okay, could you switch? Good. So the rooftop unit on the high school is 22 years old and well past its useful life. But even more important, the last 2 years, we have operated these units at like 100%, well beyond what they're designed to operate. And so there is a real concern that we may have created the situation for a catastrophic failure. And if that system goes down during the middle of the year, we'll have school out maybe for a week or 2, or maybe longer, I don't know. But any repairs we make will be kind of Band-Aid repairs. In addition, the classrooms in our buildings in both the high school and the middle school often become extremely warm in the fall and in the spring. It's not uncommon for teachers to be teaching and students to be learning in classes where the temperature is 85 degrees and the humidity is well above what's considered acceptable. This project will not include air conditioning, but it will include dehumidification of the air, which they tell us will make a very big difference in the comfort. In addition, the current system in the high school includes in classroom unit ventilators, which in addition to being very inefficient, are also very noisy. And so it can be hard as a student and as a teacher teaching to learn in those classrooms. Also, the ventilators, which are in 25 of the high school classrooms, are either 100% open or 100% closed. And so during this past couple of years, when ventilation was so important, we were using just an enormous amount of energy. So this is a key moment, we think, to make this upgrade. Alicia Stenerson.
So there's some other additional benefits for having this new HVAC system installed. Some of those benefits include improving healthy airflow throughout the buildings, as well as increasing temperature comfort, like John mentioned, is really important when we're talking about teachers and students in a learning environment. Not only that, the noise levels of the units will be decreased in JRMS and CHS. We also have a really unique opportunity with our current contractor, EEI, who is doing the work at both JGS and RMS. And that's a unique opportunity for us because there are lots of districts making building improvements right now, and we have the opportunity to kind of keep one of them to continue getting this work done when other districts are trying to find people who are able and willing and available to do that. So we're trying to capitalize on that situation. Other benefits of having this work done include improving health and dehumidifying the air in both JRMS and CHS. And as we have learned firsthand at RMS, especially this year, my children attend there, so that's what I'm most familiar with. Dehumidifying air is very important because it can lead to mold problems in classrooms, which delay the start of school and cause mass panic for many children. So we're hopeful that we can prevent any future problems and delays of the start of school and damage being done in classrooms so that we don't have mold problems in the middle high school and the high school as well. Other benefits of the HVAC system are maintaining healthy air and having effective ventilation, which we know can reduce the spread of airborne illnesses and is recommended by the CDC as a prevention strategy for COVID-19 and other illnesses. I think that's all the points that I have. But I appreciate you listening, and I really hope that we support this article as towns together so that we can see this work done. Thank you.
Marcia has indicated there's some pictures there of some of the work that's been going on. Thank you. Discussion on warrant Article 7.
Roberta Acer, Main Street Ringe. I don't disagree that this work needs to be done, but I'm having real issues with the way the school board presented this. This should have been a bloody bond. 5 years ago, we did a $2.8 million bond, and the payments are like $67,000 a year instead of $374. And I don't believe that a simple majority will pass this. It says the lease agreement has a non-appropriation clause, but the voters don't get non-appropriated if it goes in the budget, which I think takes a 3/5 majority. I was selectman in Ringe for 9 years. We did lease purchases all the time with non-appropriation clauses, voted on them every year, sweated it out. This should have been a bond. At 4.4 million after a boatload of money from the government and 2.8 million a few years ago for the HVAC systems. I just think this is an inappropriate way to get the money. I'm blown away that this wasn't done as a bond at much lower interest rates.
Ruben and Marcia, anybody want to talk to this?
It's a choice how a district or any municipality in New Hampshire chooses to finance capital purchase agreements. RSA 33(7)(e) allows a governing body to enter into a lease purchase agreement. I understand you may know that, but I'm explaining it and what it means. And appropriations to fund lease agreements with non-appropriation clauses are approved by a simple majority vote. It is a method that's used frequently in energy saving contracts and in HVAC type contracts, because most of the equipment that is installed is put up on the roof and could be removed if there was no funding for it in the future. As a result, it's not considered financing, and it's an alternative way of entering into a financing kind of arrangement, but the statute says that it's not considered debt. So you avoid the debt requirement of the Municipal Finance Act by entering into these type of lease agreements, and there are lease companies that review them in detail. And the district purchases the equipment, doesn't really purchase the equipment, it actually leases the equipment for the period of years. And when the lease is up, you pay $1 and then the district owns the equipment. They're very commonly used. And frankly, in reality, it's not a requirement that the board even present this for voters to approve. They can actually include the appropriation for this, the original appropriation for it, in the district's operating budget and have the lease approved as part of it. Because of its size and because of its duration, the board chose wisely, I think, to present it to the voters to find out whether they'd be willing to, in fact, approve this lease agreement. But they're done all the time. We've worked on many of them. So, and that's a fact.
So a follow-up. How does it get non-appropriated if it's in the budget? It's my understanding, and it always has been, that one district meeting or town meeting cannot bind another without a supermajority vote. This is binding them by putting it in the budget. So a simple majority is saying that for the next 15 years, you're going to have this payment to make because it goes in the budget. That's the whole point of the non-appropriation clause, is the legislative body still gets to address it, but this takes it away.
Now, in the future, the legislative body could theoretically zero out a line for the payment of that lease at the time that they're considering the operating budget. And the legislative body would have that authority. And then the district would have to decide whether or not the conditions of the lease for returning the equipment had been satisfied and go about returning the equipment. And that would be a major project, but it's a possibility. And that's the way these are done.
And that's why I think that this was done inappropriately for the amount of money that it costs, and for the amount of money that it could have been done so much cheaper to the taxpayers by doing a bond for this amount with a much lower payment, as the equipment is going to be around for 30 years. It would have made more sense for people's pocketbooks to do it as a bond, as you did for the last HVAC at 2.8 million.
Further discussion?
Dan Whitney, this one's going to take a little longer. I'll get rid of the mask. Okay. Went back, looked through, and when I look at CARES and ESSER and all of that, it looked to me like the district got roughly $4.2 million over the different sets of grants. HVAC is one of the things that could be paid for that way. Is there a possibility of using some of the ESSER money to pay the first year, which would allow for a zero impact in year one? Second, knowing that you've done the other HVAC work and all like that, how much of the ESSER money has gone to bricks and mortar things like that, and how much of it to direct educational? And third, I understand you may not be able to use the ESSER for that, and that would be fine, and we can just cut that part off. That I wasn't able to research enough to know. And I'll wait in case there's a follow-up, please.
Who would like to speak to that?
I'm just pulling up the grants. So the district received in 2019-20 in the CARES Act, the $274,975.91. Actually, there was some additional money that the state had that we were able to go after as well. We were able to shift monies out of the grant, put them in different places, and be able to get actually another, I think it, 165,000, which was, not very many school districts have done that. We had a great effort on in our business department and with Leslie actually to be able to make that happen. A lot of that money went to supporting remote learning during that time frame, as well as all of the PPE and anything that had to do with making things more digital, less paper written. Even some of this material right here that we have right here was utilized during that, it was purchased during that time frame. Going on to, and that money is used. Going on to the 2020-21, we received $1,082,426.99 in the CARES Act, what we would say the ESSER 2 funds. So the second round of funds. Those funds added together with what was received in 2021-22, which we received for the ESSER 3 grant, an additional $2,433,000. Now, out of that last grant, we are committing $1,933,510 that added to the last year's grant, which was a little over $1 million. Those two combined are paying for the 100% of the Jaffrey grade school and the Ringe Memorial School, and a portion of the middle school's HVAC project that is going on. So all of that, none of that is going to the taxpayers, it's being paid through the ESSER funds. We save those funds for that purpose to make sure that the entire community could benefit from that. And certainly we started off with the elementary schools, one, for fairness in both communities, but also two, because our youngest learners stay in their classrooms a lot longer and aren't as mobile going around and outside and so forth. There's another approximately $500,000, a little bit less than that in funds. That has to, in order for us to agree to use these funds, we have to use 20% of the whole allotment for the purpose of supporting student learning, getting the kind of catch-up growth, I guess you could call it. And so that money has yet to be used right now. There are a series of surveys going out to different stakeholders. There will be surveys going out to community members as well on how best to utilize those funds. But they're specifically for the purpose of remediation or improvement in those areas. I think they can be used for social emotional support as well. But it's a very narrow use ability, and as though it would not be able to be used for, I mean, the money's there, but that money is not allotted for this type of work.
Thank you. That's just the kind of depth I was looking for.
Thank you, Ruben. Thank you, Dan. Further discussion on warrant article 7. Seeing none, I sense you're comfortable with the wording as is. I'll instruct the school district clerk to ensure, whoops, I'm sorry.
The question about, we went around that bond versus lease and the interest rates and stuff. We have that,
Yes, the question that I had posed to the chairperson was there a reason why it wasn't bonded? And she mentioned Carrie's working. So why don't you come up and share some insight?
So when we first started looking at the difference between going for a bond versus a lease, we looked at the differences between what the benefits and the disadvantages would be for either. When we were looking at the rates for a 15-year term, the difference between a bond rate and the lease rate was approximately 0.2%. So the lease rate was approximately 0.2% higher. The rates obviously are fluctuating right now, and they've been going up since we first started looking at this, but the difference is very small percentage between doing a bond or a lease. For a bond, we have no option to prepay. So if down the road we found ourselves in a situation of surplus, we wanted to prepay the loan off, we would not be able to do that. With a lease, we can do that. There's a small documentation fee of $795 for a lease. There is no documentation fee for a bond. The bond requires a 3/5 passing vote, whereas the lease requires a simple majority. The district owns the equipment at the time of purchase for a bond, and the district has the option to purchase the equipment at lease expiration for $1. The lease requires a governing board resolution or ordinance authorizing the lease agreement. The lease payments are subject to annual non-appropriation clauses each fiscal year. Those are the basic differences.
Okay, further discussion? Ruben?
I mean, there are definitely a couple of reasons why the board went with the lease, but one of the most important reasons was the ability to pay it off sooner if possible, which is actually what we were able to do with in another situation. We have been able to do pay off smaller leases with laptops and things ahead of time. So we have had a little bit of a history of, if we've had a surplus, we've been able to return money to the communities, but also pay off the debt sooner.
Okay, seeing no one else at the microphone, I will instruct the school district clerk to include the wording of Article 7 as was read and as you have before you. Warrant Article 8. Shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $300,000 to be placed in the SAU 47 Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund established in 1990, created for the reconstruction and repair of real estate buildings and capital equipment. This was recommended by the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School Board by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. And to have someone speak to that, Patricia.
Thank you. So good evening, and it's very nice to see all of you here tonight. Thank you for taking an interest in this deliberative session and for sharing your voices with us and your opinions. Tonight, we are asking for an additional support of the Building Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund. We have received funds in past years, have asked for it, and the voters have supported it. The current balance in the fund is $30,000. That is not a lot of money. In fact, Immediately following this meeting, we plan to spend that money. Well, not tonight, but like we're going to vote to spend that rest of the money. Past uses of this, we've done slides in the past, parking lots. We've done great things out at the field. We've replaced an oil tank, I think. But all of those things were necessary in the year that they happened. But if we didn't have the reserve, we couldn't have done them. And a lot of them happened to be more emergent. And we seem, so we're hedging on that. So we want you to look at this as an investment, $300,000, right? That's 300, yeah. We did reduce this amount. We had asked, we're going to ask you for more, but we thought we would stick with 300,000. We will likely spend that this year. Things we need to spend it on, including doors. Throughout the district, we have a lot of doors. We have a lot of doors that go outdoors, and those outdoor doors rust and are becoming decrepit. We have an illustration of that up here. Oh, those are the good parking lots. So go back to the good parking lots because we want you to like feel good, feel really good about your investments in the past because it's working and it's really awesome. And our students have greater pride in their schools because they can get into them safely and it looks great and it's terrific. Moving on to the not so terrific parts. So what's amazing about this is the corrosion actually will eat right through these empty core aluminum. We've learned a lot in the facilities committee this year. I am a member of the facilities committee. It is long meetings. Anyway, so if you fund this, we can get better doors. The kids can have better egress. We also don't have very many doors that are ADA compliant. Does it make sense? And we really need to fix that. And it's about now's a good time to do that. Energy efficiency. We actually had to replace some of the doors. This 30,000 we're going to vote on tonight after this meeting. There's some doors that actually wouldn't shut anymore. That doesn't make sense. Doors are supposed to shut. So let's make the doors shut. Okay, thank you.
Discussion from the citizens. Yes, please. Would you approach the microphone?
I'm June Saylor O'Day from Ringe. And given that this article deals with real estate, I have a question. Does our district still own that land on Route 202 between Jaffrey and Ringe? And if we do, why isn't it considered to sell that land to help support this fund when it's becoming apparent that we keep putting more and more money in maintaining the facilities that we have? It's becoming pretty obvious to me that we're never going to use that land on Route 202.
It's interesting that you say that, and I don't know the answer to that specifically, but I will say that we do have a timber harvesting plan that has been both, we've assessed the land for the quality of its timber, and we have entered into agreement to look at harvesting some timber for some revenue, not a lot of revenue. That's certainly something, the use of that land could be looked at in the future. It's not looked at right now. It's an investment or it's an asset right now.
Okay. I just wonder because I've asked this question, I think about 6 years ago, and it's always something that's going to be looked at and looked at. That's why I asked the question.
I appreciate you asking the question because it's an important question to ask. Because five years ago, we had a committee, maybe it was because you even asked this question. We put a committee together to decide what we wanted to do with that property. And it's around that time, because of COVID, we've been pushing it off a little bit, maybe next year, to formulate that committee again to relook at that decision. The decision at the time was to maintain the property because what we could get for it, would have been close to $100,000 less than what was paid for it. And then we knew that we could possibly harvest some of the timber, which we are looking to do at this point in time. We have a plan that's put in place, and it should be happening actually this coming year to get some of that revenue in for the district. There is a lot of good hardwood out there in that property. You know, there have been questions still, you know, I get them about, you know, every couple of weeks, especially since the beginning of the school year. Why don't we put something like a new school together again and try again? We have looked into costs for new schools. Something like that would run between 60 and $80 million right now. Significantly more than what would have happened those 20 years ago. And there's an absence of building aid. So while we can certainly go down that road and do more research and so forth, we've thought that it'd be more prudent to kind of maintain our current approach, but we will definitely be looking at that land usage again for the very reason that you have mentioned.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I sense you're comfortable with the wording of Article 8. And I'll instruct the school district clerk to ensure the wording appears just as you see it in front of you and as I read. Article 9, shall the school district vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $75,000 to be placed in the expendable trust fund established in 2005, known as the Special Education Contingency Fund, created for the purpose of building a reserve for unanticipated special education costs. This was recommended by the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School Board, again by a vote of 7-0 with no abstentions. Marcia?
All right, thank you, everyone. So as you've already heard tonight earlier when we were talking about the budget, there's been quite an increase in special education. If you could do the slide there. Thank you, Nick. So first of all, it's a trust under the RSA that's listed there. The board, the agents of the trust, and in order to spend the money, we have to have a public hearing, published 7 days in advance, which you might want to be checking your calendars because we're going to be having a public hearing to transfer money out of this contingency fund because special ed has gone up so much. Right, so the things that it's used for, it's a contingency fund. So things that aren't anticipated or come in at a higher cost than is anticipated. So out of district tuition, transportation, all those things that were talked about earlier today that are really driving the budget up. So we're trying to use the contingency funds to, well, this year, not run over our budget, but also then in the future for next year, we want to make sure we've got some contingency there so that we don't end up taking money away from the operating budget and not have programs that we hope to have based on our budget that we're hoping will pass. If you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is, again, it's a contingency fund. There are years where we haven't needed to use the monies. There are years where we have not had to put money into it because we felt comfortable. But some of our costs in this past school year, in the current school year, such as out of district placements, they have risen by about 200%. So we didn't anticipate that. So we are digging into the contingency fund this year. If you want to go to the next slide there, Nick. So at our last board meeting, this was presented to us by Jen Horn, our student services director. And you can see that our current financial commitments exceed the current budget by $440,000. We have some grant funds that we're going to use to help reduce that to 263. So the request for this current year is $260,000. And as I said, the next board meeting, there's going to be a public hearing first to transfer this. All right, so the next slide. After that, the trust will have 179,000 in it. We anticipate costs are going to continue to rise. So where we're at now, even though it's increased on some cases for some services, 200%, it could rise even more. And we're trying to cope with that. So it's most likely we're going to have to dip into this contingency fund next year. It's not going to be one of those years where we don't have to. If you pass this warrant article, it will replenish the trust by 75,000. This is another one of our warrant articles where we originally had a much higher amount in there. We had, I think, originally 250 in there. And we felt like our budget was going to impact people, even though we worked really, really hard at keeping that budget. And as we've heard before, it's actually less if you took out the inflation and the special ed. It's actually less. Sorry. Okay. So, but we know the impact to your tax bill. So we've reduced it to 75 and say, you know, we really need that, because with that, it would bring the balance back up to about 254,000. And that is a little less than what we're having to take out of it this year. So hopefully we'll be in a much better place. And that will be enough of a contingency that we won't have to do away with any programs by taking money from the budget to do this. So that's what we're hoping for. Thanks.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, I sense you're comfortable with the wording of Article number 9, and I shall instruct the school district clerk to ensure the wording as you see in front of you and as I read. Our final warrant article, Article 10, is a petition warrant article. I shall read it. Shall the voters of the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District approve the following warrant article? Whereas an educated citizenry is necessary for the effective functioning and preservation of a representative democracy, and whereas full transparency in government is a bedrock principle for ensuring accountability in a democracy, and whereas the primary purpose of our schools is to provide a quality education that prepares students to become active and knowledgeable citizens and productive community members, and schools must provide the tools students need to acquire and develop analytical thinking skills that enable them to navigate the complexity of a modern economy. And whereas the primary responsibility for guiding the education of children and overseeing what is being taught in our schools and classrooms falls primarily to parents, grandparents, / legal guardians in conjunction with elected school boards and appointed administrators. And whereas taxpayers also have an absolute right to know how their education tax dollars are being spent, then therefore, consistent with the above, this article shall require that the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School Board of Education / SAU 47 shall make available by September 15th of each year and is available thereafter throughout the school year all instructional materials, including but not limited to textbooks, printed matter and/or materials in electronic form used in classrooms, to the general public and libraries in each town in the district, Jaffrey and Ringe, as well as in the Conant High School Library. In addition, copies of all professional training materials provided to teachers, administrators, and staff shall also be made available to the public. The district is hereby instructed to spend $200 from existing budgeted funds to publicize the availability of these materials to the public. This was not recommended by the Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School Board by a vote of 0 and 7 nays and no abstentions. Would the petitioner like to speak to this warrant article?
Roberta Acer Ringe. I actually didn't write this petition. It was sent to me. And I think that most people that have heard the news are aware of what this is about. It's not, probably not a problem in this school district, but the whole point of this is to keep inappropriate, what the district feels, the legislative body, and the people that go there, what they feel is inappropriate out of the schools. And this is the only way to monitor it. I understand the school board is against it, but I would have thought that they would have come up with a better way of having the materials available than voting against it, because this is all about transparency and making sure that the parents in this district know what's being taught in their schools. And I think a lot of this came about because of Zoom classes, not here. You know, this is not necessarily here, but just what's happened around the country. And this is to try to maintain what the district wants taught in the schools as far as parents. Jim? Anyway, this warrant article was sent to me and everybody said, I don't think we have time to get it signed. And I said, oh, sure we can. So that's why I'm here. Do you want to speak to this, Jim? Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Tall one. You need to raise that a little bit.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm Jim Quayle. I'm from Ringe, and I am here to speak in support of this petition warrant article. I was one of the people who signed it. As my former colleague, Ms. Acer, put it, this is about transparency. It's about openness in government. There's no question in my mind that the education of the children of the community is one of the most important functions that we perform as a society, because upon that education depends the continuation of our civilization. And every one of us, parents, residents, taxpayers, whatever, have a vital interest in knowing how well that education is being conducted. And a fundamental element of that education is the materials used to conduct the education. As it says in the petition warrant article, the textbooks, printed matter, I won't repeat it again, but all the materials used in that education. In a sense, we already have transparency because RSA 91A guarantees that the public can have access to know what these materials are through a right to know request. That, as many of us know, can be involved and potentially an expensive process if one has to pay for the physical copies. What this warrant article would do is greatly ease the access of, give me a 1 minute warning, please.
You're fine.
Okay. Would greatly ease the access of the ordinary citizen and parent to these materials so they can readily monitor what their children are being taught. So I support this warrant article. I believe it should go to the voters as written to give them an opportunity to weigh in on it and decide on it. I will say, in my capacity as a state rep for Ringe and Fitzwilliam, I have noted there is a great deal of interest, especially since the onset of the COVID situation, in the contents of the curriculum people's children are being taught. I do not expect that interest to diminish. Therefore, again, I encourage all to support this warrant article. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, sir.
Joseph Fortier, I'm from Ringe. I'm a paraprofessional. I'm at the high school and the middle school, which means that I support students' education in the classroom by assisting the teachers. And as the gentleman said, the article is redundant. And I understand it would make it more convenient for those who'd like to see what we're doing. Let me explain why this would be an undue burden for a classroom teacher. On a Tuesday, a teacher may be trying to explain a mathematical concept and not getting the kind of attention
and the kind of understanding that they're looking for from their students. And they go home and they try to design a lesson that's more relevant. And perhaps they're doing slope. And perhaps an athlete from the United States in the Olympics has just accomplished something amazing on a ski jump, and they're going to take a video clip of that, and they're going to turn that into a lesson. And they're going to present that on a Thursday. And I get an email on a Wednesday night with a little blip. This is what we're doing on Thursday. There's been a slight modification because this is more relevant. This is responding in real time to the needs of the classroom. And if you're saying that on September, you want them to tell you every electronic printed piece of material that they're going to use for that lesson, and they're going to be restricted by the language of what you're proposing here, they won't have the flexibility to do that. And I am telling you that that happens 5 times a week in just the few classes that I'm in. These aren't changes in curriculum. These are modifications to the instruction in real time to opportunistically achieve understanding with the students, and you would be taking that away for the convenience of your surveillance of what we're doing. You can still do the surveillance. That is allowed you by law, but this particular proposal would be unduly restrictive to the teachers who are responding in real time to the needs of the students. Thank you.
Thank you. I see a couple of people who wish to speak. I'll recognize the gentleman here. I'll then recognize the lady. I'll then recognize Mark Teeger. Again, please remember what we're here tonight to do is to approve the wording that will appear on the ballot. Sir, you have the microphone.
Kevin Swift, Crestview Drive in Jaffrey. I'd like to move to amend the warrant article as such. I move to delete the last 2 words of paragraph 5 and delete paragraph 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, what are the words are you, which paragraph is this? I see.
Paragraph 5 is the last 2 words. It's on the second or the last page, whereas taxpayers have an absolute right to know how their educational tax dollars are being spent. Delete then and therefore, and then also the other 3 parts on the back there as well. I have this in writing for you also.
First paragraph says, whereas an educated citizen, 3 is necessary.
Yep.
Second, the second one, third one, fourth, and the fifth one begins, whereas taxpayers also.
Yes.
Okay, what do you wish to delete in that
The
paragraph?
last 2 words from paragraph 5.
Which would be?
Then, therefore.
So you wish to delete the word therefore?
Then and therefore.
Then therefore, okay.
And then also delete paragraph 6, paragraph 7, and paragraph 8.
Your amendment then, sir, is to delete the words then therefore, which is in paragraph 5, and then paragraph 6, 7, and 8. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, I need a second to that amendment. Is there a second? We need, okay, one name, your name, please. Carolyn Wiley? Carolyn Wiley Ringe, thank you. All right, we have a second to the amendment. Sir, would you like to speak to the amendment?
As others have said already, this is just an undue burden on the school district. Everything is open and available. All we have to do is ask.
Okay. You don't wish to speak? Okay, thank you. Mark, do you wish to speak?
Mark Teeger from Jaffrey. Mr. Moderator, I have a question of the chair. Excuse me. I'd like to know the names of the petitioners, number one. And Roberta said somebody sent it to her. I'd like to know who sent it to her. Thank you.
Okay. Roberta? Names of the petitioners. Okay, I believe Mr. Teeger was asking for the names of the petitioners on this warrant article. Yes, you may.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I do not have a copy of the signatures in front of me. I do not know the names of all the people who signed the petition. I do know it was properly submitted to the school board, accepted by the school board, as the signatures being legitimate, and that is a matter of public record. So if the questioner wishes to know those names, he can seek those names from the school board or the SAU office. That's my answer to you. They're a matter of public record.
Yes, and I was informed by the school district chair that those names, those petitioners are listed with the school district clerk. She does have those, so you're correct.
Is there a copy of the petition as submitted? Does somebody have that tonight? I would like to know the names of the petitioners who signed the petition.
We don't have it with us, Mark.
Okay.
Okay, but it is available if you were to contact
Okay.
the school district clerk. Yes.
I'd like to suggest that in the future, anybody submitting a petition article or any organization receiving a petition article have copies of the petitions available as we do at town meetings. Okay? That's number one. Number two, I probably won't be as erudite as the last speaker, but I will say that this smacks of censorship. It is an attempt to, perhaps by intimidation, control what is being taught. And I can understand why people would want to do that also, by the way. However, I don't think it's the proper method to do it. I think if somebody has that degree of concern, then I think they ought to run for the school board and let the school board, which is the proper place, deal with it. Thank you.
Thank you. One moment, please. Mark, if you'd like to see the list, we can have it right here. If you'd like to come up and look at it. A potential legal question was asked, so I do want to check with school district counsel on this. John, one moment, please. Oh, it's okay as is, if you remove it. Okay. Mr. Frederick.
Okay.
Good, John.
Question for legal counsel. Is this a legal article? It seems that it's imposing basically requirements upon town elements, namely the libraries, imposed by a different legislative body.
This is one of my favorite questions. There is no illegal article in a school district or town meeting. All articles can be brought before the board and before the body for disposition of the question. The effect of an article, on the other hand, is prescribed by the laws that govern the relationships between the legislative body, which you all are, and the governing body. This is clearly an advisory article, even if it was unamended, because the body that's charged by the legislature in Concord with determining the accountability and the system for educating students is the school board. That's your elected board. They are the directors of the corporation, if you will, and they're in charge of making those determinations. So the legislative body has authority over the budget. It has authority to elect people, and it has the authority to make determinations of the adoption or rescission of specific pieces of legislation that it has control over and that the legislature has given the body control over. This is not one of them. So you can't say it's illegal to consider or discuss it. But even if it was passed in its unamended form, it would be advisory only. Okay.
Meaning that it could be fully ignored.
The board could take it under advisement for the, and you know, that has, people have argued and said, you know, but that has some value. Yes, it does. If it was adopted, it shows what the voters want to have happen. But if it's not adopted, that also has some value to I suppose, to give the school board some information, but it's not binding.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Yes, sir.
It will be no surprise that I oppose.
And your name, sir? I know.
I'm sorry, that's fine. Jim Quayle of Ringe. It should be no surprise that I oppose this amendment. I would like to seek clarity on the details of the amendment because despite the best efforts of our skilled sound person here, the audio clarity back where I was sitting was not of the best. So what I think I understand is that the word therefore has been proposed to be deleted from the sixth paragraph?
Then therefore. The fifth paragraph,
Okay,
which.
then therefore, got it.
Yes. The paragraph would read, sir, if it were amended, whereas taxpayers also have an absolute right to know how their educational dollars are being spent.
Okay.
Period. We're deleting if the amendment passes, then therefore, and then all the rest, which would be paragraphs 6, 7, and 8, which is in bold type.
Okay. It basically removes the, no, I'm not going to voice an opinion on the legality of that, but it doesn't matter. But I am opposed to the amendment. It does remove the substance of the proposed warrant article. From the demonstration, when that amendment was proposed, it's clear, I would guess that I might be outvoted on this, but so be it. However, I think to remove that substance from this proposed warrant article and therefore deprive the constituency of this school district from having an opportunity to weigh in on it is a mistake for the school district and the people who think, and it's a mistake on the part of the people who support this amendment. I think transparency and access to information about the work our teachers and staff are doing is very important. I think I just said this, increasing that access would be a benefit not just to the voters who are interested, but to the hardworking teachers themselves. Regarding the opinion by the person who spoke before me that this could amount to censorship. I don't see a connection there whatsoever. It's simply improving access to information about what's being taught in this school district for parents and voters. I think that suffices for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further discussion? Yes, sir.
Oh, David Druin from Ringe. I do not support this article. I can think of 10 reasons why I wouldn't, and probably more. But it's a petition warrant article. And if we change it, we're going to gut it. 100 people here tonight. We'll take that vote away from probably 18 to 2,400 people across the two towns that will vote. And then the question that this is raised, that it raises, doesn't get answered. And I think it's going to rear its head again. I don't like where this comes from, other parts of the country, a certain suspicion. I think we're very lucky in this district. It's a two-town district. We have a great school system. I support it, but took two kids through. I don't think we have those concerns, but I think if it is gutted, that question doesn't get answered, it's going to rear its head again. I think we have very wise voters. I think it should go to the voters as is. I'm not going to vote for it. And let's answer that question forcefully. This is not what we want. This does not support the teachers. But I do understand if it does get gutted, but I think it would just linger on and it could be very messy and noisy and it's going to rear its head again. I'd like to see us put it in front of all the voters and vote it down and send a message to support these teachers. So that's it.
Thank you. Ma'am, did you wish to speak?
Margie Clark Van Jaffrey. I just have I guess, an issue with your using the word transparency as if the district is not already very transparent. And I guess I just need to say that, grades are put on Web to School all the time. Curriculum is up on the website. The kids get a handout at the beginning of the year with what's going on in class, including the textbooks. Yes, things get changed day by day to, make things relate to the Olympics or, better suit the kids, but we're very transparent. And this is saying that the teachers in this district are not transparent. And I don't think that's a true statement. So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sheila Vanderhorst. I live in Ringe. I support the amendment. I do not support this. A big problem that I have with this is it's wonderfully general. It's got beautiful language, but it doesn't have any nuts and bolts to work with. Who would foot the cost of this? How much would it cost? What libraries are we talking about? We're not being specific. Is it a public library, the school library, where these things will be housed? And what if it's a public library and it doesn't have the room? Are we going to then pay the taxpayers to build a new room to house this stuff? And is it every year more new stuff? So we have more rooms being built? That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, I don't have any, I I can't even vote. Um, But I did think it was important for me to provide some information as to why some of the reasons, there are more reasons, but some of the tangible reasons why the school board chose to vote 0 for it and the 7 against it, is really because of many things that have been stated here tonight. It would be an extraordinary cost to do exactly what is stated in here. And that would, you'd have to hire people full-time, several of them probably full-time, to be able to consistently get the information, because the only way to not do that is to just have a very static program and put us back into a environment that is directly opposed to the district strategic design, which is policy that has been adopted by the school board. It goes in direct defiance of personalizing of learning, as some individuals have talked about the fact of reacting to data and reacting to the students' needs in the moment. Because as we live in a digital age and we do a lot online, that there are many facets to that cause difficulties. As for transparency, yeah, this is the most transparent district I've ever seen. I mean, what we put out there is amazing, and we're very, I think, amenable to helping people understand what it is we're doing. Furthermore, as part of our personalization efforts, our teachers over the next several years are working with learning a new how to use a new learning management system, which will provide more transparency for our learners as well as their parents to understand how they're doing in all areas, the curriculum and instruction. It will be tied to that. And so as Margie Clark-Cavan had stated, you know, there's an awful lot of transparency already, and we're certainly, as I believe the school board believes, that we understand the diverse beliefs of the community and are sensitive to that as we go forward with designing and developing our curriculum, and our teachers are too. So that's the rationale, some of it. But cost-wise, yes, it would be an extraordinary cost.
Thank you. Further discussion? If not, I sense you're ready to vote on the amendment. And the amendment is, shall we delete the words in paragraph 5, then, therefore, and then the next 3 paragraphs, which means the warrant article would end with, whereas taxpayers also have an absolute right to know how their educational dollars are being spent, period. That would end the warrant article. Is everyone clear in the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment to delete what I just read, please indicate so by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. The amendment is thus defeated. No, I'm sorry. It's approved. It's approved. The amendment is approved. I apologize. Must be getting late. Okay. Is there any further discussion on the amended article number 10? Seeing none at this point, then, before we accept a motion to adjourn, I want to thank you and compliment you for the civility and respect you've demonstrated. Members of both towns, you've done well. Charlie Eichert? Charlie Eichert would like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration on warrant articles 7 through 10. Is there a second? Second by Dan. All those in favor restricting reconsideration on warrant articles 7 through 10 signify so by saying aye. Opposed? You restrict reconsideration. At this time, the chair will accept a motion to adjourn the deliberative session 2022 for the SAU 47 Jaffrey Ringe Cooperative School District. Is there a motion to that extent? Okay. Who said that? Dan, Dan, you ought to come up here and do this. Okay, Dan, second, Bill? Second by Bill. All those in favor of adjournment signify so by saying aye. Opposed? Go home. Thank you.